Greetings, my fellow humanoid dwellers. I create videos on technology and other random things. If you like this video, you might like others. If you don't like this video, you still might like others. Consider subscribing to my channel or checking out my Patreon page. If you already subscribe, hit that bell. In this video, we're going to eliminate the text that we were writing to the button area of the screen, and we're going to start to plot the data back into the canvas portion of the screen. You can see that I still have the screen set up like I did in the last video, and I deleted the file, so now we have to let it fill up with data. All 20 spaces are now full with data from the Raspberry Pi, so now we're going to go back to the code and make changes to display the data. We're going to start in the CSS, and we're going to display the temps again, and we're going to hide the button. All we did was we switched the display none to the button area, and now we're going to show the temps. Now in the JavaScript, we're returning the array in JSON format. We're going to use the same temp array that we used up here, but we'll be defining it as the data is returned. We also don't want this to display in the button anymore, so we're going to comment this out also. So now we're going to define the temp array. And if you remember, we sent the data back in JSON encoded format. In JavaScript, in order to decode it, you still use the keyword JSON, but you parse it. You can try to memorize these terms in the different languages, but you're better off to just hit the browser, go on the web, type in JSON, JavaScript, and it'll bring up these keywords. So it's better to just know the concepts and not to know the exact terms. Inside here, we're just going to put this. So now what we've done is the temp array is now what we've returned from the PHP. Now we can eliminate this comment because it's later, and we can use this code again. We should be able to reuse this. So we're going to uncomment the whole thing. Temp container is the exact same as it was before, but now we're not going to be using the response text in the same way, so this can be eliminated. For this area, we're not going to be doing one point at a time. We're going to be treating the whole array at once. We could probably take care of this down in this area, but just to keep things clear, we're going to go ahead and have two separate loops. But they will be identical, so we can just copy this and put it right up here. And then we're going to have to end it by putting a closing bracket, and then just to keep things clear, we'll tab this out. So now this is all going to happen for every one of the readings in here. Now we're going to have to make some changes to this because we won't want to do that to everything. We're not going to be moving the values into the array. We're going to be using the values that are currently in the array, so we don't need to worry about shifting anything or popping anything. So we can delete this. And we're going to have to get the value out of the array and assign it to the current value of temp every time we loop through this. So we're going to make temp, and then by using I, which we define up here, this will point to the value that we're currently at, and we'll make it equal to temp. But then when we're all done, we want to reset the current value in the temp array and set it back equal to temp. We're going to take the value that we're currently on, set it to temp, manipulate temp, and then put it back in the array, and then we'll go on to the next one. We're not going to be able to see this because we're not writing it to the screen, but JavaScript has a command called console log. And we'll write the array before we make the changes. and we'll write to it again when we're done. That way if there's a problem we should be able to see the data. And I'll show you how that we can see this in the browser. Other than that, it should work at this point. Okay, so this is where we left off. It's been collecting data this whole time. I'm going to go ahead and refresh it, and it should now show our screen. And now we can see the data. Now if I put my finger on it, we should get it should go up and change. And it appears to be doing that. Now it's coming back down. Now I'll show you what the console log is. I'm using Firefox for my browser. If I press the F12 button, I'm going to go ahead and clear it just so that we're starting from a blank screen so you see how it filters through. So now what you're seeing is this is the data that comes in from PHP, and this is the value that it's turned into. And the oldest data, or the newest data, is down here at the bottom. I'm going to warm up the sensor again so that we can see this rise. You can see that it's going up and now it's coming back down. Go back up to here, you can see that we only have 20 readings. We really want to get 75 readings. And if you also remember, we left that one file read at 200. So we're going to have to go back to the PHP now, and we'll change the number of readings we're collecting, and we'll see how that reacts. We'll see if we break it. So in the PHP, it's right here. While count's greater than 19, we're going to change this to 50. 50 times 6 is 300, so it is definitely more than that, and we'll see what happens. And you can see that it's moving across the screen. I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video, and we'll see if it just stops at some point. I've left the console log up, and you can see down here that the array is growing. Remember, we set it at 50. So we'll come back here when it gets up to 50. It's interesting, it seems to have locked in here at 35. I'm wondering if that's the limit. We're going to take 35 times 6 and see what happens. 210. So it went by it. And the interesting thing is if you look at the chart, we've got this line that goes way up. So we're going to go ahead and bump that up to 220 and see what happens. So we'll go back to our PHP, change this to 220, and this went to 36, 37, 38, and now it's stuck at 38. 228. It's kind of interesting. I would have expected it to fail at 222 maybe, thinking it went over by 6. Not sure why that's happening, but in the end what we'll do is we'll just make sure that we're above what we need, and we're going to set it to 400 and see if we can get to 75. What I find also interesting is that it didn't fail. It continued to record the data. The front end of it, or the oldest data, looked a little strange, but it did seem to work. So that can be good and bad, because sometimes it's better if things just fail when there's something wrong in the code, because sometimes when it just looks strange it can be harder to figure out what's going on. This will be something I'll try to keep in mind going forward if I ever do have an error. I went ahead and left at 50 just to see if we end up at 50. So now we'll wait and see what happens. And you can see it settling in at 51. So now we're going to go ahead and go back and change it to 75, and we'll watch it and make sure it doesn't go off the screen. We're actually going to set this at 74, knowing that that should give us 75. Seems to have locked in here at 68. I'm not 100% sure why that's happened. Oh, there you go. That's why. Looks like we'll have to change it to 500. Now we've gotten to 75. It'll hold there. That's a pretty good amount of data. The next question is it actually working? If I were to hold it again, warm it up, you should see a hump work its way all the way across. We're going to give that one final test. Now that I'm about halfway, I should be able to refresh this page and it should come back just like it is right now. And that worked. And as you can see, it appears to be working. I'm going to go back to the code now and go over the next step. And part of this is we are initiating every time we collect the data by the JavaScript. So we're relying on this browser to collect the data. There might be a case where you might want to set something up on a Raspberry Pi, put it in a room, disconnect from it, come back later and see how the temperatures have been for the last hour, hour and a half, maybe doing a reading every 10 minutes or every 1 minute or 5 minutes. Our next step, and probably the final step in this series, is to set up a cron, C-R-O-N. It's a way of doing something in Linux so that it will be scheduled and it'll run, and everything will be contained then on the Raspberry Pi. All the data will be stored on the Pi, and whatever computer then you use to log into it, you can collect that data. I personally have never set up a cron on a Raspberry Pi, so I believe it'll be the same as any other Linux system, but it should be interesting. So we'll see where it goes from here. That's about it for this video. Thanks for watching.